Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996. Welcome back to the Gay Buddhist Fellowship. Our tradition is to go around and introduce ourselves first before we introduce our speakers. But just by a show of hands, is there anyone here returning after a long absence or for the first time? Great. We'll try and remember you as we go around so we can make you feel welcome as we socialize afterwards. So we can go around and just introduce ourselves by first name. I'm Tom.
My name is Paige.
I'm Ray.
George. Lee.
Jack.
John.
I'm Jerry.
My name is David.
My name is John.
Chris.
I'm Wally.
Peter.
I'm Casey.
I'm Shantanu.
My name is Ari.
Ralph.
Carol. My name is Tatua.
I'm Steve.
Richard. I'm Paul. Philip. Kent.
Jay. Jack.
Jerry. Rick.
Sandy.
George.
Oswaldo.
Scott.
Dan.
Peter.
Jerry.
Alan.
Manuel. Mark.
Dennis. Refugio.
Excuse me, Daniel. Joseph.
Douglas. Michael.
My name is Freddie.
Charlie.
Michael.
Darcy. Roy.
Marshall.
Did we miss anyone? Terrific. So today we have the honor of hearing from the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, Spirit Incarnate. Since their first appearance in San Francisco on Easter Sunday 1979, the sisters have devoted themselves to community service, ministry to those on the edges, and to promoting human rights, respect for diversity, and spiritual enlightenment. As the original Holy Card spelled out, the group's mission, SPI is an order of gay male nuns devoted to the promulgation of universal joy and the expiation of stigmatic guilt. Joining us today are Sister Loganberry Frost. On the very end, Sister Baba Ganoush. Ganesh. The wordplay, and then our very own Sister Mary Media. And Sister Rose of the...
Sister Rose of the bloody stains of the sacred robes of Jesus. But you can call me Boom Boom. Actually, that was my slave name. Since I've become a Muslim, I'm now Boom Boom Triple X.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for inviting us. I feel a little bit like parts of myself in collision here. I hope it doesn't go nuclear. And I was thinking that perhaps we could just start out by, since from my perspective, the sisters sprang out of the fairy tradition, that maybe we could begin with chanting of the seven goddesses to invoke the spirit of female energy into our group today. So maybe could we all stand? I thought about making everybody do the hokey pokey, but I guess we can pass on that. But if we could just chant the names of the 7 goddesses 6 or 7 times, perhaps, and just to welcome that energy into this room today. So, I believe it started with Charlie Murphy. He originated it, and it's been adopted by the fairy movement, and the sisters use it many times in their appearances. So, Isis, Astarte, Diana, Hecate, Demeter, Kali, Inanna. 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 Thank you. And please feel free, the sisters always see ourselves as an inclusive group, so it's very unusual for us to be the center of attention. And, we've always stood for inclusivity. So please, if you at any point have questions or suggestions or whatever, please feel free to participate. Think of it more as a circle than as a traditional Dharma talk this morning. So, as I say, for me, we were asked to discuss the sisters' connection to spirituality. And one of the things that I'd like to start off by making a point about is that many people think that that the role of the sisters is to mock nuns and to mock Catholic religion. And speaking for myself, that's not the role at all. I mean, I see the sisters really as nuns. In the gay community, we do serve the function that nuns traditionally serve in the Catholic order. We educate people. We nurture people. We put ourselves at service of the community. And we feed people in many ways. And so it's not that we are trying to mock people of faith. In fact, if we're mocking anything, it's the hierarchy of the church, which can be misogynistic at times, and which has devalued the role of women within the hierarchy.
If I may interject, sister.
Please.
We're trying to bring levity and joy where it's been squashed. And what we do comes out of the ancient tradition of the shamanic, transgendered, wise person in old tribal cultures. And we've lost this with industrialization. And even though we see it all the way through the medieval period, even in Western Europe, and much more recently in Africa, the Americas, Asia, in pre-industrial cultures. So what we do is, as the transgender shaman, we bring this into modern semiotics using nun drag. And in many ways, this is honoring the good work of the nuns that we loved. And, sometimes a kick at some of those awful nuns that we hated. But, to bring that element of humanity, that, nuns are not just these black blob stereotypes, but, there are women that some of us honored, loved, or hated. We bring humor. One of my great memories is many years ago when I used to dress, more youthfully. My naughty underwear, with fishnets and a black corset and chains and whips. And, some guy came up to me and says, "I've always wanted to beat a nun." And I just handed him my whip and said, "Okay." And a couple of years later, the same guy came up to me and said that whipping me enabled him to resolve his religious conflicts and go back to church. So, in many strange ways, many unexpected ways, we help people to, we live up to our mission, promulgating universal joy, expiating stigmatic guilt, helping people to get over the hang-ups and the fears that have been shoved down their throats around spirituality, ritual, church, mosque, synagogue, whatever, so that they can find their own spirituality and to greet God not in fear, but with a laugh.
We came from so many different perspectives in the beginning. It was just as if all these meteors had come crashing to Earth and joined together and created this huge burst of light. Many of us at the beginning were transcendental meditation teachers, maybe a third of us, and I remember very fondly of having group meditations before we would go out to do a gig. It was so lovely. And I still teach transcendental meditation. I've had a formal practice since 1970. And I'd like to think of some of the sisters who aren't with us today. Reverend Mother, the Abbess, was a very great transcendental meditation teacher. Many of you know that in July in India they celebrate the full moon of the Guru Purnima, and Reverend Mother was quite ill and dropped the body as the full moon was rising over the bay on Guru Purnima. And one of the other sisters in South Africa saw him in the sky laughing. Thought, well, Billy must have dropped the body. So I just want to honor Reverend Mother this morning.
We call them nuns of the above.
Not to be confused with my ballot designation when I ran for office.
Which was none of the above.
I was the none of the above. The original. And I'm still alive to talk about it.
I am a fairly new nun in the order, and I've been I joined the house in 2009, and for me it was the perfect blend of art, activism, and spirituality. And I really loved and thought that it made sense that it originated out of San Francisco, a place that attracts people from the near future. And so with that, I thought it was befitting and actually lovely to find myself called to such a long, now 33-year queer tradition, which has a lot to be proud of. And that's because I think it's artists and prophets and activists and all kinds of folks that make up the sisters, because since 1979 this thing has been happening, and it is now spread worldwide, from Uruguay to Berlin, to a recent call from Manila to London to Orlando. The non-consciousness, is here, and it's been here since before the sisters. And so, in some ways, maybe one could think of us as the queer community's Shriners. Or not. Or nuns, we have our funny ways, but we manage to do a lot of funny good. And still manage to ruin it for everyone, hopefully, and I think we're trying to figure that out now.
That is one of the sister slogans, ruining it for everyone. And it's, the sisters do try to turn that energy. For example, Boom Boom yesterday reminded me about our event, the Red Party, that we held. Dianne Feinstein was mayor of the city, and she was asked about what she thought about the sisters, and she said, "When I see them, I see red." So what did we do? We held a red party. Unfortunately,
On May 1st at the Russian Center, and in those days the Russian Center was the center for Tsarist white Russians.
who were apoplectic when they saw what we had done to the center, decking it out in communist. And they wanted us to take it down, and we wouldn't. And so, of course, we ended up on the front page of the papers on Monday.
Tommy flags with Tommy flags.
So, yeah, I think the Sisters, for me, is about taking that energy and turning it around, empowering yourself, like Sister Atanarsvara, who was in one of the very rare disputes among sisters in the order, with Sister Coco Chanel, 2001. Sister Chanel wrote a letter to the order calling Sister Atanarsvara a vicious, power-hungry bitch. So he took that as his sister name from then on. So now he is Sister Vish, as we call her. So it is taking that power in ways that people try to disempower us, either as gay people or economically deprived people, or in any way, and empowering ourselves with it, turning the energy around and empowering ourselves with it. Because I think we do come from a long line of men who operated at the intersection of the goddess religion, the earth religion, and Christianity.
And it's not just the goddess religions, but I think most religions have a tradition, and certainly we find this in Christianity, Islam, and Buddhism, the tradition of finding wealth in poverty, of finding strength in meekness, of turning those conditions to our advantage and finding tremendous power and depth in what other people see as deprivation.
I think a lot of our spirituality or the work that we do in that area has to do with our appearance. First, and because we've been around for so long, that meaning has changed over time. So strictly from a visual culture perspective, you think about what a nun means and what a nun meant, given the convention in 1979, in the early 80s, for a lot of gay men moving here from, and some of you may be those folks, moving here from all over the country, from the middle part of the country, right? And you encounter the nun once again, and this time, what does it mean that this time that nun is yours and will play with you this time, and literally play with you, and work with you, and raise money, and do all kinds of things, and organize politically. And then over time that changed. I think when the AIDS came along, the sisters played a huge role in that. I think the mention of Sister Chanel, 2001. I believe this is the same sister who designed the rainbow flag, right? And Sister Bobby Campbell. Does anyone remember Bobby Campbell?
Florence Nightmare.
The founder of, was it NAPWA? It wasn't even NAPWA back then.
Well, she was, basically, Bobby Campbell, Sister Florence Nightmare RN, was like the original AIDS activist in San Francisco. He had been a nurse and active in politics, and when certain diseases started popping up around 1980, he had a health column in a newspaper called The Sentinel, a gay weekly like the BAR. And, he also was like the first open activist person with AIDS.
That's right.
And a leader of people with AIDS, and a real pioneer in many ways of the struggle against HIV. And he really brought the sisters into that struggle.
Mm-hmm.
And we published the Playfair pamphlet.
That's right.
And hosted the first fundraisers and for the KS Foundation, which would become the AIDS Foundation. And, we had any number of activities promoting safe sex.
At the Cauldron and other places.
Yeah, some of them very practically promoting safe sex.
But the thing was that we undermined the model at the time, which was used to distribute STD information to people by embracing the idea that people were going to have sex, which at the time was kind of revolutionary because the information was always kind of had a moral kind of castigation to it as it was handed out. You shouldn't be doing this, but...
This is dirty, disgusting, and spreads disease.
Right. Whereas, our take on it was play fair. People are going to continue to have sex, but take care of each other. Respect your brother. Treat the people you're playing with some compassion and consideration. And so we changed. I think what we tried to do was to change the model and have it come from the needs of the community, not from the needs of the existing power structure.
It was the earliest, having been in public health, it was the model. It set the model for public health, for what would later become the first safer sex pamphlets. So even with that, I think with all the cultural, and not to mention, the Sister Boom Boom Law, not to mention that particular contribution, those contributions through time, I think for me personally, I came into the house in 2009 as the co-curator for the 30th anniversary exhibition, so I came in completely in love with the history of the sisters and really got to see the archives and really worked with our then archivist, Sister Mary Juanita Higher Power, to go through 33 years, or what that was then 30 years of queer tradition. What was amazing was all of the outcomes, and then in all of the drama, and all of the comedy, and in the style in which it all happened, which I just couldn't help but love it. And so, in terms of sister spirituality, I just keep thinking, of probably 3 key moments, and it would happen in this order, and they all have to do with silent processions. Mm-hmm. So the first and most recent was December 11th, 2011, where I produced produced Project Nunway 3. This is the 3rd installment of a fashion fundraiser that I produced, where I pair sisters with local designers and artists based on a theme. And this year's theme was 2012. And the idea was to work with recycled materials to really work on the ethic of sustainability, but also in terms of what being a sister is about, is being able to take whatever, the random here and there, and create a look of the ministry. So in this year's walk, we interpreted 2012, and as sisters walked down that ranged from, taken from the Bible and Revelation and the angel, like with this 15-foot wingspan, or a sister who's coming down in habit, and she's completely covered in ash, and it's called Pompeian circumstance. and then another sister who comes and she looks like she's in Dune. It's like either this kind of crazy space nun from the deep past or the deep future. And I thought to myself, my God, there is ministry through this visual glimpse and interpretation of the future. Isn't there ministry in the collaborations and the creativity that happen, and how libidinous of us to be this fertile, because I just kept feeling like it was so much fun, and the crowds were pulsing, and it was a complete mess on stage, and there were fights backstage, and lots of hugs. It was alive. It was absolutely alive. And I think that is, in some ways, the power of art, right? Like, despite our want to be these righteous activists. Like, I think our comedy in and of itself takes care of the work, right? And then the one before that, another walk, was a procession that we conducted. And it was a project that pulled together with a group, Honey Sound System. And it was basically a silent walk through the Castro. And we created a silent meditative walk that's available to everyone and available on the Sisters' website. Where you could take a meditative walk through the Castro with a map that shows you key spots in Sisters' history and consequently gay history. So I collaborated with Honey Sound System and another artist, and in June 2009 led about 75 people, half sisters, half community, and we all dressed in white, all got in a single file line, put our headphones on and walked quietly and slowly through this guided meditation through 1.5 miles of the Castro. It was the most amazing pride parade I could ever imagine, right? And here we are, and it was so San Francisco. It was so San Francisco. Again, that moment where, I think the art and the kind of DIY mysticism comes together. And then I would say lastly, when I first got my calling to be in the Sisters, was this procession that these three beautiful sisters were in. At the 30th anniversary exhibition opening night party, all the sisters got in line according to tenure, right? And down they went, I don't know if you've ever been to Yoga Buena Center for the Arts, but there's this grand staircase, and below were, the community and all the supporters of the sisters, as well as sisters from around the world. And so in that procession came 30 years of sisters, one by one. It was amazing. And it was absolutely amazing, and it was queer, and it was all ours.
Yeah, that sense of community is, for me, the central connection to spirituality. For me, the Sisters is the sangha. It's the sangha of the sisterhood itself. And we used to live together in convents and things like that. We're a little kind of diverse now, but we have this connection, we have this history that it's always very special to be with each other. Like, coming together today is like the first time we've done something together for probably since the 30th. So that night at the 30th, I got evidence of the way that the community feels a connection to the sisters too, an emotional connection to the sisters. Because we were dancing. There was a dance after we did the procession and everything, and I was dancing with somebody, and he stopped and he said, he sort of took me aside and said, we lost Hank this year. And it was like this opening up, this way that people open up to the sisters. I think people just want to be heard. And there aren't a lot of opportunities for people to get heard outside of their own circles. And I think the more we can broaden the circle and broaden the sense of community, then it's amazing how people will respond to that and the kind of lessons you can learn from them, actually.
Just let them say so.
Okay.
Back there.
Good morning,
Steve. Good morning.
30 years plus. I'm just curious your take on the changes in the parish of the Castro and the Mission. It's accelerated, to me it's accelerated so much in the last year of a place of hipsters and wealth. And that's our base. And some of us came here for community, and it seems to be slipping away. Big stores on Castro Street are not stores I want to go to. What's your take on where the parish is at, and is there any hope, and what's your read of it? Or is it lost in time? Is it slipping away?
I think there is a Camelot quality to it. That we were tremendously fortunate to be in a magical time and place. And I have such mixed feelings about it because we were so incredibly privileged, those of us who were here in the 70s, to participate in all that, not just the sisters, but a lot of the building of a community which, not just this last year, but, since the early 80s has gotten more and more commercialized, more wealthy, upper middle class, excluding the people who helped to build it. I'm sort of shocked to see, the kind of legislation that's being proposed by the supervisor holding a seat that was originally carved out for Harvey Milk. There's no real sense of political continuity there. It's just identity politics. And I think the sisters have always been about, on the one hand, celebrating but transcending our identities. That, we are not just, we are an order of gay male nuns, but we've expanded to include female nuns and nuns who aren't gay and transsexual nuns and, rich nuns, poor nuns, nuns of all different colors and spiritual backgrounds. And, I really don't feel a part of the Castro. I haven't in a long time. I find my community, my connection, my spirituality elsewhere. Certainly there's a lot of history there. I take people there on historical tours. But what it is now, it's like a shopping mall built over a graveyard. I have very difficult feelings with that.
Well, I think the Castro, I'm optimistic. I try to be an optimist. I think that the times something will arise that responds to the times. Let's face it, we were, the Castro, when the sisters started, was a clone city. And, we're the perfect clone response to the clone city. It's something that comes out of its period. And so I think the sisters did lead an Occupy the Castro demonstration a few times since the Occupy movement has started. But I do feel that whatever response to the criticisms of the way the Castro has transformed itself need to come from the people who are of that community and of that time. I feel I'm changing my name to Sister Mary Mesozoic. I'm not really of that. I don't feel of that community so much anymore.
I think I also feel that the way that the Castro presents itself now is sort of a reflection of the larger culture, which has all sort of moved in that direction. I think that people have a very difficult time relating to each other outside of either economic terms or digital electronic terms, or it's a shiny new toy that we have, and I wonder where the substance is in it sometimes.
Another thing to think.
It's a tool.
The thing is, the Castro isn't and hasn't always been. Before the Castro became the main gay neighborhood here, it was Poke Gulch, where all the action was, where the fabulous Halloween parties were, where all the best gay bars were. Poke Gulch and south of Market. And, I share Sister's optimism that there will be a reaction, that there will be something new, that there will be a response. There always is. But I don't necessarily expect it to be in or out of the Castro. It could be some other part of the city, and now that electronics have dislocated people and we connect across geography rather than in geography, it may happen at that level. So, the community is there, but it's not necessarily in the Castro.
And I think it's also important to look at it from the perspective of the youngest generation too. I mean, look around here. We're not the young generation, and for someone who's coming from the Midwest,
Speak for yourself.
or Oklahoma, I mean, it's a revelation to see something like the Castro. Still, it's a revelation for them, and I think that's really important for us to see that excitement too for those young people.
Mm-hmm. And I was just thinking, if you think about actually the spiritual center, it still is the Castro in terms of the spirit that we're talking about today, in terms of from Shar Zahab to Hartford Street Zen Center to all the different real churches and temples and organizations are still there, and people go there because somehow we have that connection that is here and is lots of other places, but that's actually stronger than it was probably in the 70s. And so there's something new that we've put in there that isn't being taken away.
But it's not new anymore.
True.
And, when Mary Media talks about, we respond to the clone look, this was basically a look of young men who were looking for something new, who were building something new. And as happens even with the sisters, what was new and revolutionary once has now gotten very establishmentarianism and locked in to patterns. And, we know from the cycle of life that only lasts so long until something else entirely new and different comes along to shatter the conventions.
I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the ritualistic practices of the sisters.
Let Ganesh speak.
There, we have our vows. I mean, I think the ritualistic aspect of it, maybe I'll talk a little bit about the process. Based a lot on the Catholic process, there is a minimum year initiation. So that goes through various stages where you're expected to do certain things and you're evaluated accordingly. So you come in first as an aspirant, then you advance to novice. Aspirant, postulant, novice, and then you become a fully professed member or a black veil. There's certain codes that delineate in terms of what one wears or doesn't wear when we're out at events. So that a fully professed member is known as a black veil simply because that nun can wear a black veil or any other color as opposed to a white veil, which is the penultimate step where you can only wear white on your head. So these are, I think at its core, it already sets people through ritual, and these grown women and men and everyone in between are electing to go through a ritualized process that is looked upon and decided by a group of people, and then you're brought in through a tradition. And so there's a little bit of that.
Whereas in our day, you just had to be a pushy queen, and basically that's how you got into the order. But it is interesting to watch kind of a religious institution evolve. The sisters, on the one hand, is not a religious institution. On the other hand, it is completely, and so. But we meditate together.
Schrodinger's convent.
I consider that a ritualistic practice.
I actually have a question about the meditation.
Mm-hmm.
You spoke about transcendental meditation. Do you still do that in the order? And can you tell me?
Well, I travel about 6 months out of the year and teach in other communities. So I can't speak for what the order is up to nowadays. I plug in every now and then. I'm really grateful to be invited to.
What's transcendental meditation? Sorry, I don't know.
It's a specific technique that a fellow named Maharishi Mahesh Yogi brought to the West. Many of us remember when the Beatles learned to meditate. I started meditating in that era. I could tell you a little bit more about it, but it's a specific silent technique. One uses a mantra.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So first, I want to thank you for being here and bringing this information, because I have been one of the people that you referred to that thought of the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence as simply a poking fun at Catholics and sort of being useful that way, but I have no idea about the other things, and I find it inspiring. And optimistically looking forward, it strikes me that the current political season has almost unparalleled opportunities. Do you have any plans?
Well, she's the one who ran for office. So, do you have any political aspirations?
Oh God, no. I think a good citizen should run for office once in their lifetime, and anybody who does it more than that is absolutely crazy. As for political satire, of course, the whole nun thing, the most obvious target would be Rick Santorum. And, what could we do to him that Dan Savage hasn't already?
Or that he hasn't done to himself.
He's so auto-satirical already in so many horrible ways.
Did you say auto-satirical?
Yes, auto-satirical. He's sort of like, trying to make fun of Rick Santorum. It's like, Tom Lehrer said that, reality outstripped satire when Henry Kissinger got the Nobel Peace Prize.
You mentioned Dianne Feinstein earlier in her quotation, and we think back to 1979 and how things have changed since then, and look at where she was then and where she is right now. Do you have any indication that she's changed her tune toward you? Any kind of interaction?
She doesn't call me.
Speaking of your detractors, Sister Baba Ganesh, you mentioned that there's this characteristic of taking criticism and turning it to your advantage, or reflecting it back. Back in the face of those who criticize you. Do you think that the San Francisco Archdiocese has finally picked up on this or not?
In terms of, I think, let me respond by saying this. There's 33. I want to just remark on the different generations of nuns, and because we're so diverse, but there's also this marked difference between different generations, and I'm of the later generation, and I find it's kind of tied to what this gentleman was asking in terms of what we're doing in terms of political street theater art. Not much, actually. We're doing some work with Occupy, but in terms of response to any kind of awareness around issues around religious tolerance, any of that, none of that is happening right now. And I think that there's this thing where the house, which is bigger than it's ever been before, with a trademark and with all of this fancy machinery all around it, because at 33 years you just end up becoming an institution. There's just no other way around it, right?
There are 85 orders around the world, is that right?
Yeah.
Something like that.
I'll speak for myself. From my perspective, we're kind of at a point where we're figuring out, what are we doing? Who are we? What is our relevance to the community? And what's happening? Because in many ways, we've become a trademark in a 501c3 because we've become a grants-giving philanthropic organization, which is really important. But in the face of the declining economy, so we're not even dealing. I would just say that I wish that we were dealing with those issues of creativity and satire, but we've gotten into the business of making money, right? Money that our communities need. That these small grants that we can give to small organizations that don't, have either the capacity to have a grant writer that actually means something, have become our purpose. But I think to that end, we're experiencing the same kinds of difficulties, perhaps more than any grant-giving organization is. And so with that, we're asking these questions. Now, it's like, okay, so if it isn't the money, if we're reminded that that isn't where our might is, I think that we're at a really important time where we're asking these questions about what's happening in the world right now and how do we ruin it for everyone in 2012.
Well, I hope the sisters don't ever lose their connection to the margins. I really feel that the sisters have always gravitated to marginalized communities and tended to the needs of people who are being neglected. And I think that that's an important spiritual pursuit in and of itself. And I think, so I hope that that's something that the sisters never lose in the process of chasing connections with more influence and things like that. But finding ways to raise money on the margins and fund, people artists who don't fit into the dominant culture or social service organizations or people who are doing harm reduction, and Sister May Joy be with you was telling me yesterday, he gets criticized because he goes into shooting galleries and helps people, with his own program of harm reduction. And so I hope that the value of what he does and that the sisters continue to keep their focus on that end of the spectrum.
I think that's all we've got time for.
Time for one more?
Time for one.
Do you have any idea how many people have been through your order over the years?
We did this really strict. Okay, don't quote me on this. Sister Helen did a recent count, like a survey. Oh God, I think I'm going to mess this up. I think there were over 300 names.
In San Francisco.
Just in San Francisco, in terms of like people who've come and gone, far away, and moved on, started new houses, have passed on. Yeah, it's a long tradition.
And there are 85 houses around the world.
And there are and have been other orders. When we started our order, we started hearing from other orders.
Right.
Different groups of gay men who had pursued the same kind of drag spirituality. There are the Sisters of Perpetual Motion in Atlanta, Sisters of Pain and Suffering in North Carolina. In Los Angeles, there are the Sisters of the Perpetual Motion, Pictures, Arts, and Sciences. And we've been hearing from the Jewish convent, Our Lady of Vayim Kavalt.
You used to be in an order before you joined the...
Oh, yeah. Well, before I was with the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, I actually with a couple of different, sort of overlapping orders. I had joined the Sisters of the Holy Face of Jesus, as revealed to St. Tuna. And Sister Hamburger Deluxe left our order, and we just sort of floundered around until Rondo de Marie came to us from East Lansing, Michigan, Surf City Convent. So we regrouped as the Sisters du Marie, and Mother General Wilberforce became Sister R. Marie, and then there was Sister Donna Ann Marie, and of course Sister Rondo du Marie. And while I was at that order, I was Sister Labata Marie. So
it's endless. The names,
non-conscious.
The puns.
So we are just like the largest, most conspicuous manifestation of non-consciousness, like a giant zit on the face of the cosmos. But the truth is that non-consciousness is universal. It is of all places and all times.
Sisters, thank you so much. Do we have any announcements? Gary.
Hi. Again, thank you, sisters. Actually, next week we have a original sister who's going to be speaking vertical, and I don't know what his name was back in the beginning.
Ross Erection.
And David Lewis, who I don't think was a sister, but they're going to be doing a talk on metta.
Other announcements? Jim Stewart?
Good morning. Thank you, sisters. We have a full house today anyway. There's an array of treats out there, which I hope you will enjoy. There's tea and coffee. If you have, there's tea. If you have tea, please wash your cup in the sink and use suds. And if you drop germs, crumbs, please. But there are little critters in the building, so if you see crumbs on the floor that are your responsibility, please lift them up. The Dawn Bowl is out there, and we request $5 or up. And I'll be standing sort of near the bookcases in the coat rack with the bowl. We had a steering committee meeting a couple weeks ago, and we exercised our annual largesse and made 10 grants, which we're very proud of. But there was a conspicuous drop in Sunday Dana collection from 2011 compared to 2010, which just is no lack of generosity. It's just people are missing the bowl and are leaving and are not committing to finding the bowl and leaving something. So please take that as your personal responsibility in the social hour. But I'll try and be as conspicuous as possible. Also, there is people tend to, who want to go out to lunch together, gather at the door around 12:30. So that's always fun. Did I miss something?
Sign-up sheet?
Sign-up sheet, yes. Right out here, there's a sign-up sheet for if you want to get on our email list or the listserv to get our newsletter and our announcements, and it's a way for us to know where to find you. I think that's it. And enjoy. And sisters, thank you again.
Thank you.
Closing circle.
Anything else? Okay, let's gather in a circle for our dedication to American
Dedication to marriage.
By the power and truth of this practice, may all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all be free from sorrow and the causes of sorrow. May all never be separated from the sacred happiness which is without sorrow. And may all live in equanimity, without too much attachment or too much aversion, believing in the equality of all that lives.
I think there's room for a wonderful science fiction story about the sisters going and flight to the stars. That's a great idea.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.